Hello, this is Pupu Noob, and I am back with another game developer interview. And this time I have with me Robin, the co-founder of Klonk Games, and they recently launched their game Shift Happens, which is a puzzle platformer. Hey Robin, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. So I saw your post on Reddit on our games. You did an AMA for your game, and that is how we met. So before we start with all the shift happens related questions, let's do a bit of an icebreaker thing. Uh, what are your favorite games of all time?
My favorite games of all time is probably Eve Online.
Oh, nice. Do you still play it?
Oh yeah, I do. I think it developed into something. I wouldn't say it's an addiction, but it's something I come back all the time. So I play it on and off. I have like a 3 months pause, but then I go back, and now it's even there's like the free to play option, and that made things worse.
Oh, okay. Um, okay. So the next question is during your crunch development time when you have to stay back really late or just rush a lot of work, what do you guys eat? What are your meals during crunch
I
time?
that depends. So there's one like there's an Asian food thing outside here, so that's where we go usually if we don't have the time to make proper meals. But usually on the way home, I grab a burrito. There's a great burrito place in Munich. It's called Condesa, and
Mm,
it's very near to my home, which makes it also just having it that available instead of cooking dinner is horrible. Yeah, but they're
right.
great, and I think that's my food of choice. And for the team, it's usually pizza because there's a great pizza place around. So yeah. But we didn't have too much crunch though. So we had a
Mm.
few days that were a little more exciting and a little more pressure involved, but it was okay.
Okay, so let's start with the shift happens stuff. So what is it? What is shift happens?
So Shift Happens is a co-op platformer. We built it around the idea of having two people to cooperate to do almost anything in the game. So you have a very basic platformer controls. You have a character that can jump, that can you can run, and then it starts. Like also something you can do in some platforms is picking things up. But the core mechanic is the shift, which is also in the title. It is the mechanic that you have the two characters that both of the players control have different sizes. So there's a small character and a big character, and they can change their size at will. So at any point in the game, one of the players can just push a button, and he will become if he was big, he will become small, and the other player will do the opposite. So never at the same time can you have the same size. And the idea behind that is that the people have to talk to one another to find to communicate to coordinate this mechanic.
Right.
And we always built it around the idea of having these two people working together, discussing puzzles, and then trying to solve them together. And that's what we did. We built a lot of things that one player cannot handle, and so we built a lot of obstacles that involves at least two people to do things. And this was the base idea of Shift Happens, and that's what, in the end, I think we executed quite well.
Do you have an elevator pitch for shift happens?
Not really. So I think some reviewers said it best. It's basically it's 2D Portal 2.
Hmm. That's a pretty good one to get from reviewers especially. Um,
Yeah, that was very nice to hear because Portal 2, the co-op, is something that we look up greatly to. It's a very well-made game, and the co-op levels are insanely good, and it's so much fun to play. So it's also something that from via the dynamics of the games of both players are needed to achieve a goal. And that's what makes it a very good comparison to our game, and it's something that we looked up to very much when we made our game.
so is that one of the inspirations for Shift Happens Portal 2?
Yeah, it certainly is one of the inspirations that we looked at when we were trying to find something that was similar in dynamics. So the mechanics are very much different. So they don't have like the size. They also play a little with physics, and both players but basically in their case, both players have the same abilities. And that makes it, level design wise, it makes it very different. But from the dynamics that arise from this, it's very similar to our game. So yeah, we looked up to that game and we looked at some of their solutions, and especially physics puzzlers have very similar problems. Like you have to compartmentalize parts of your game, or for example, to make a level basically unbreakable. So in Portal has this thing that a level can't break. So you can't get a level to the point where you have to restart it. You can always go back to a certain point, or you can always fix things. Although that might be a puzzle in itself, but you will always be able to fix it, and that's one of the great things of level design, or the high. I'd say that's very difficult to achieve, and they do it. For example, the boxes, you can lose the boxes, but you can also respawn them. So this is why there's a spawner for the boxes, which is in it. It would have been enough to just put the box there. But if you only put the box there and the player loses it in maybe like the acid, top of acid or whatever that is, then the level is broken. And so they have a box spawner. And I think we have one box spawner in the game, because we thought like maybe we can do it better. It turns out that is a very nice solution that they have, and that maybe that would have saved us some time if we directly copied it. But we didn't dare to.
What other games were? How did you guys come up with the idea for Shift Happens?
That's a long time ago. I think we made a Flash prototype where we had the base mechanic of the two players changing size. I don't know why we did that. I think it was more or less like it wasn't a bug, but it was something that we wanted to do something different with it, I'm pretty sure. And then it turned out to be a lot of fun if you did that with two players and they were connected. I don't exactly remember because it's a long time ago. This is almost like 6 years ago. We did another game that was called Mercury Shift. That's a two-player platformer that has the same mechanic, and it's made in Flash. So when we started studying, this was one of the first games that we made, and the idea stuck with us. So we really liked the idea, but we saw that the execution wasn't great. So the 2D Flash version is very slow. It's horrible. I can't play it. I can't possibly play it. It's one of the things that I come back to, and I hate my own work in a lot of ways then. But I think that's like a typical creator's problem. I hope that's not going to be the case with Shift Happens, but we made so many mistakes in that thing that weren't fixable in this game. So Mercury Shift wasn't fixable. There were so many things that we should have done different, but we couldn't change at the point where we were. So we thought, okay, so maybe instead of changing things that just fixing it, we do redo them, so we can try to fix our mistakes in a new game, and that's where Shift Happens then came in.
So tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get started into game development?
That's also very it's not a very clear path.
You guys met at university, right?
Yeah, partially. So the group that's here now, that works here now, met at university. So we started a team at university, and some people came, some people went, and the 10 people that now work here, we found us at the university. But before that, I did at my own school. I was in basically the AV club. It was called AK Informatik, just meaning like the gathering of nerds at my school. It was a group of 6 people, and we did some IT support for the school, because at that time they didn't have a single teacher who was able to just install Windows or knew what an image of a operating system was. And there we are doing IT services for the whole school. And at some point we get super bored, and we did make a browser game. It's called Deep Serious. It's still out there. You can still play it. And the browser game, it's a strategy browser game where you build things. And I was doing that with one of the co-founders here, with Michael. And we did it basically for shits and giggles. So we didn't. It was just like a time that where we had a lot of time, and we wanted to just make. Basically, we did a copy of another game that's called O Game, and then we thought, oh yeah, now we're injecting our own ideas, and then we did some own ideas that were also nice, so it worked out quite well. And we installed the game, so it was PHP driven, so not the most performant thing, and it was server driven, so we had to have it on a server. And we installed it on a school server, and I actually got detention for that because we got into trouble for installing it on the school server. That was fun. That was good times. And then I briefly changed my careers, and after school I didn't study game design, but I went into web design. Because for the browser game, I did a lot of web design and a lot of 2D design and also a little bit of 3D, but mostly 2D. And after that, I started an apprenticeship as an event engineer. I canceled that and I started as an event manager, which I also did like, and then I canceled that as well. And then I started studying game design and met the other people. And I reunited with Michael, who was studying it. That was fun.
So you mentioned about your studio having 10 people.
Yeah.
And that is relatively quite big for a first-time studio for your first-time game, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's quite big. And also it may be the source of a lot of pain that we went through, because I mean, with 10 people, as you said, it's quite risky. It's a lot of money. So you have to spend a lot of money for 10 people per month just to keep them alive. It's not even that we're like paying them huge wages. It's just basically covering rent and food. So we're paying a little above minimum wage in Germany. So it's not much. But it's enough for everyone, so we're fine. But it's a problem, especially if you start, because you have a very big footprint from day one on. And luckily, we could find some funding in Germany. There's it's a media fund. They do movies, but they also do games, and they gave us 70,000 euros for the development of Shift Happens, the prototype for Shift Happens. At the time, it was called Mercury Shift 3D, because we thought of it as the second title of Mercury Shift.
Right.
And they gave us a little money, and we found our first customers, so we could do some contract work on the side. And that's how we ended up with a little money on the side and basically capital that could pay for 10 people for half a year. And then we just went off and tried to work on the game as long as we could. And in the meantime, we got more clients, and then the client work was sustainable, and we could do client work and then also work on the game. So we have a very mixed model of doing client work as well as the game development.
Right. And so let's get into some of the development stuff. Just some basic stuff first. What did you guys use to build this game?
Okay, so on the core of it, there is Unity, which is probably the most popular indie game engine there is. For most of our tools, we used what Unity offers. I think for the standard editor here for all coders is Visual Studio, of course. Then we use some plugins for Unity. There's one that we use for all the controller support, which is called Rewired. Then there's one that we use for color correction, amplify colors. It's pretty amazing. And we use, I think, Cinema Director, it's called, for our cutscenes. But now Unity has their own tool, I guess. I just saw that. I'm interested in that, if that could go, is nicer. And for all our graphics, we basically used Blender. So Blender is the go-to. Oh, yeah, and for our characters and character animation, we did use Maya LT. Because Blender for animations is a little, not that great.
Right. So I caught you using something there just now. You used the term indie, and in your AMA you said you hated the term indie.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the problem
I found that interesting because although I still think that the term indie still sort of is able to, when somebody uses the term indie, there's a picture in your head straight away, but it
that's true.
kind of lost all of its original meaning, because now you work with a publisher, which you yourself also work with a publisher, and you can still be considered indie if you're small enough, and there's no line that one can draw, right?
Yeah, God damn it. I tried avoiding the term, but yeah. So my problem with the term itself is there's no proper definition, and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Right.
as you said, if you hear indie, there's a certain thing in your mind. You know, what you consider, what everybody would consider indie is sort of the same thing. It has to do with like being financially independent from someone, having creative
Right.
control over what you're doing.
Right.
And maybe up to a certain size. And yeah, I wouldn't consider ourselves like a super a indie, because I think a lot of people have used and abused the term for like
Do you
marketing
think
reasons.
developers use it as a shield?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. Yes, I think so. I think some use it
I'm indie.
as
You can't criticize me. I'm just a guy in my mother's basement making this game. Although it's not like I will criticize an indie developer for not making a GTA 6 or whatever. Do you think that they use
yeah.
it as a shield?
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think some do, but I think most of the people, so most of the people that I would consider independent developers are very much, they live for their work, and they take every criticism very serious, and it see, like, if you really want to set up the studio here, you just tell the whole room, oh God, there's another negative review, and everybody will be like, no, 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 please don't.
Right.
And it's not because like it means less sales. It's because like that hurts, because
Because it is very personal.
Oh yeah. It is the whole thing that you made. Like, we spent 4.5 years of her lives making this thing, and we know it's imperfect. We know it has its strengths, but we also are very much aware of its weaknesses. And then as soon as somebody comes along and says something about it, we're like, fuck. That's
Right.
it's something that really it hurts you, because it. Although it's just criticism on your game, you somehow take it personally, or I mean, like, not somehow, you take it very personally, because it is something that you've put a lot of time in, and you invested so much of your heart also into it. So anytime somebody points something out that you don't like, it feels horrible. And I think using indie as a shield would be nice if you would be doing that. Maybe that would put some of the weight off your shoulders, but I think it doesn't really work. I think there's some people who use it as a shield, but I don't think that's a good. I mean, that's not very honorable, I'd say. It's just some things are. If it's intentional, like if I did something intentional and somebody doesn't like it, that's like a creative difference that you guys have. So if I think like some of the decisions you made are not, I don't like them, then it's something different than I didn't do something out of budget or laziness. That's something different than I made a deliberate decision not to do it because I don't want to have it in my game for some features. Like, for example, the single player. We did put a single player in, but it's one of the vulnerable points of our team because we're not super happy with the single player, but we had to have it in there.
It was a decision by the publisher, right?
More or less. It wasn't the decision by this publisher, but when we started pitching the game,
you can't sell it if there's no single
Exactly. It was just that. So when we were pitching the game, which we were a lot, then people were telling us, oh yeah, that's a very nice game. How about a single player? We can't possibly sell this as a local multiplayer only game. This is impossible. And then we're very sad, and then we tried building a single player, and there now is a single player. We're not super happy with it. It's not bad, but it's not the best. And I think it's like the best we could have made, but I don't think that it is something that we're super proud of. We're proud that we made one, and we're happy that it's working for some people, and it's working for most people. You can play it. It's a little harder, but it doesn't really capture the spirit of the game. And yeah.
So is the how does the single player work?
So the idea of the single player is you still have both characters, right?
Right.
And
And you can switch
because
between them.
exactly, you have to switch between them, and also you have to shift. But that's a little complicated because your mind, basically, if you switch or you shift, that has the same the results are the same. So if I shift, I now have a big character. If I switch to the other character, which has to be big in that position, then I also am the big character. So it's very difficult making that decision, and we tried making it the controls a little more tight for that, and a little better, but it's nothing that's super working out super good. But it works, and the levels are different, so it's a complete different level design. We tried recreating the two-player levels for the single player, but they're different. So they're the whole puzzles are different, level structure is different, similar but very different, because some of the things require you to do things at the same time, which is impossible if you have to switch between the characters.
Right. So so my question is what kind of puzzles did you guys wanted to come up with? Is it more of the twitchy kind, like changing weight in midair type, the twitch kind of platformer, or was it more of the okay, you get the mask and then you stand there on a button to open the door, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we wanted to refrain from using what we call like classic puzzles, like the logic, more logic based puzzles, and go towards more of a dexterity based puzzles, like you have to do this real quick and then go there and have it more twitchy, as you say, movement. And I think now it's a mixture of both. So we have some puzzles that are related more to logic, where you have to apply a certain amount of intelligence to get through it, and but it's combined with moving quick and making the right decisions in a split second. So as the game progresses, it gets very hard, and there are some points where it's not where you have to be quick and intelligent.
Right. You also mentioned on your website there's like there's a page talking about, basically it's an about us page, and you mentioned something. You mentioned something like you wanted to deliver a quality polished product as your first game. So my question is, did you struggle with that decision? Big meaning, were you hoping to? Did you struggle with the decision versus wanting to make something more unique? Not necessarily bigger, but more unique.
A very good question. Yes, I think we struggled with that. So, the game isn't super unique. So the core mechanic is something that hasn't been used too much. There's another game out there, it's called Shift Links, that has a very similar mechanic, but it is nothing that's overly unique. It is something that doesn't feature anything that's like somebody sees it, it's like, oh my god, I haven't seen that before anywhere. Like Portal or like Super Hot, or there. So it's nothing that is so uncommon that people are just like baffled by it. And we realized that not super soon. We thought we had like the one mechanic in our hands that would revolutionize the platformer genre. We thought that for a long time, but as long as you go to conferences, you see other people's products, and you get certain knowledge, and you get wiser, and at a certain point, we realized that the value of our game wasn't the uniqueness of its mechanic, but the polish that we could apply to it. And also we saw a lot of projects that had great ideas but horrible execution. And we thought, okay, we have to get the execution right. We have to get the craft of this right. It has to look good. It has to feel good. And the core mechanic is a solid base we can build upon. Also, maybe because it's not that unique, but it's a little more generic than other game ideas, I'd say. And we thought it was the most important. The most important was to deliver something that has a certain quality, because we want to be known for that quality, and we want to be known because some of the games you see, making the second one is super hard. If you do something that's only based on uniqueness, it's very hard to replicate that process. It's very hard to replicate building something completely new and completely unique for the second time. I think for the first time, you only see the successful ones, but I don't think it's very easy to deliver a second unique title. But we wanted to be known as someone or as a studio that's able to deliver a certain quality, and that's something that doesn't go away if you subtract the idea of the uniqueness of the game. You can still say, oh yeah, it's still without the without looking at only the mechanics, that I still have a quality product at my hands. And also, it was very important because we had a lot of problems pitching the game because a lot of people didn't trust us to deliver on it. A lot of people didn't trust us to be able to finish the game with a 10-people team that had no prior experience in the video game industry before. So basically, we were a student team trying to sell something that wasn't unique or wasn't exceptionally great to publishers. And I do understand why they said no. But we thought, okay, we have to finish this one to be able to reference it and say, hey, look, we did this and we did it on our own. We basically did it for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC on our own. There's nobody else involved in this. We were able to deliver on these kind of things, so we have a reputation for the next title.
So regarding the publisher thing, because also in your blog you mentioned that in the beginning you guys were not being very realistic, especially in terms of you thought that you would surely get a deal with a publisher, right?
Oh yeah.
So what did you learn from that? And how hard did reality hit?
Ah, shit. Yeah, so it hit very hard. The problem is it doesn't hit you at once. It hits you like over the course of 2 years.
Right.
It's something that I struggled with because I thought we weren't good enough. So it's something that you, like the bad reviews, it hits you on a very personal level. You think like, oh, everybody else, like there's so many shit games out there and they got money for making a shit game. How's that even possible? And then you come into like this weird structure that video game financing and publishing has, and you see the patterns, and you see that often there's no very logic to it, and but when we realized that people didn't trust us, and being from Germany, most communication is very upfront. And one of the things that I noticed when we were doing like a lot of the publisher discussions were that the publishers weren't super honest. So they wouldn't say no to us. They just stopped replying to emails.
Right.
And that's an American no. Yeah, no, that's how everybody does it. That's a polite way of saying no, and I understand that. But at the time, I didn't understand. I thought like, oh my God, we have like 10 deals at our hands, and then like one by one, the people stopped replying. And when I applied my a little more pressure and trying to get an answer out of them, some of them would say like, yeah, it doesn't work out for us. And trying to get to the reason of them was in a lot of times was like the game isn't there's no headline in the game. There's nothing that makes the game stand out from a crowd. It's a good game and solid, but on the one hand, we're not sure you're going to deliver on it. We're not. It's very expensive compared to what other games in that category would cost us. So it's a very expensive game because we're 10 people working in Germany. We have incredibly high wages compared to the rest of the world. So it wasn't very economically feasible for them. So I understand that. I really understand why they said no to us. And also like not being able to deliver. I think like they get these student pitchers. They get like 50 of them per day. So I really understand why we didn't stuck out to them at that point. So this is why we in the end decided to do it on our own. And the publisher that we now have is someone they're doing most of for us. They're not so they're publishers on the console platform, but they're more or less marketing partners for us because they do a lot of the PR work, and they also do. So they gave us the opportunity to go onto the consoles. Without them, we wouldn't have access to the consoles that quickly. We were in the ID at Xbox program, and that worked out fine. But then there was the possibility of partnering up with Deck 13, and they did give us a slot in their launch lineup for PlayStation. And so basically through them it was possible to publish on these platforms for us, way easier than we could have done it on our own, but they had easy access. So we went with easy access.
Right. So I can't remember where I read this, but you also said something like you decided to go for mass appeal, try to make everyone happy. Am I accurate? So
yeah, that's very accurate.
So do you regret that? Do you feel that maybe we should have been a bit more, because a lot of indies, one of the advice that I constantly hear most of the time given to indie developers is try not to do the mass appeal thing, because that's a AAA thing.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's it wasn't a good decision to do that. But then again, at the time, I think it was a good decision. So at the time, we thought like as many people as we can possibly get onto the game, so we make it appealing to everyone. But then that happens that you have the appealing to everyone is also it is something that AAA can pull off, because they have like an IP that is just impeccable. That won't fail.
They have the resources, basically.
Exactly, they have the resources to throw a huge ass marketing budget on it.
Yeah,
and then do their mass appeal thing. I think we watered down on things, but also I think for the next title, I want to do it different. It was a good experience that we did what we just did, because
right.
You see what your problems are. You see for yourself. I mean, a lot of people warned us, more or less. Like a lot of people told us, like, yeah, maybe not do that. Maybe go for something a little more. At the point
More
where
niche.
you are, yeah, more niche or more. Where's your audience? Who's your audience? How can you reach them? Yeah, and it's something that I struggled with because I thought, yeah, everyone's our audience. I just go somewhere and post the game, and everybody will identify. And it's not that easy. I mean, there's an audience for co-op platformers, but they're hard to find, and they're not that organized. Like maybe an MMO community or the people that play competitive golf games, or fighting games. Yeah, I think fighting games is probably a better example. Yeah, and
a competitive golf game sounds pretty cool, though.
I think maybe for next time. Yeah. So the idea is, for next game, I really want to do something that has a little more edge to it, and that maybe some people won't agree with, and I don't want to do something that people just don't agree with, and that to prove my point.
Right.
And then it's a great game. But I think like if I make a game that has a very, or if we make a game that has very much a core that maybe has a very, very strong niche audience, then that usually I think that attracts also people from a mainstream audience. So if you do something that you're very much passionate about, and that an audience is passionate about, I think that can also attract them like a core audience. So if for example, Darkest Dungeon is a game that's not super accessible, and that is a game that probably isn't for everyone, and a lot of people struggle with it. But it has a very, very big appeal to a certain audience, and these people really like it. And the people who made the game are super passionate about it, and you can see it leaking through every piece of game that's there. That is what they wanted to do, and what they know what they're doing. And I think that's something that stuck with other people. And this passion and this The amazement that the community has for the game kind of incites I think a more mass appealing following. If that's not like very, yeah, it sounds a little confused, but I think you can build a certain drag, you can build a certain momentum for your game if you do something that's very core, very niche for a very small audience, and I think that's a good thing for games, and I think that's what I want to do more. Because also these fans are more engaging with you and are taking an active conversation with you. And what we did is our game is a little more casual and our audience is not very much visible. So I know people are playing it. I have numbers and we have player tracking, but I have spoken to like 15 overall players online. And that's like sad. That's very sad because I really like the engagement with the players and I'd like to exchange with them. And I like the idea of someone interacting with what we built, but also having an opinion or questions or maybe not liking certain parts of it. But building something that's only mass appealing, I think that's very boring.
Right. I know it's easy to take like the biggest successes and then say like, look at these guys, they were quite niche, but they sold a lot. But I think there's a value to that. Like my favorite 3 games that I like to use in terms of that is what I feel is the holy trinity of indie games like 10 years ago, which is Bastion, Braid, and Super Meat Boy.
Yeah.
Those 3 are certainly not for everyone, but they are huge successes even if you compare it to like AAA games with the amount of copies they've sold. So what kind of changes did you feel happened to Shift Happens because you wanted to go for mass appeal? Do you think do you have any specific thing that you can point to, like this changed because we wanted to go for mass appeal, or this is not in the game because we wanted it to be more casual?
So there's a lot of levels and puzzles that we didn't put in, and I think the general appearance of it. So the story, for example, something that's just very, very boring, and we didn't want to take any risk with it and alienating people with the story, and as such, it turned out to be a very boring story. So the story is really just a very small piece that's not really coherent with the rest of the game. We attached it very late, and I think we were also at a point where we didn't want to change things, so the story doesn't embed with the game really. So there's no. So we kind of did that to appease people, put in a story. So maybe we could have just left it out as a whole thing. We could just like ditch the whole story because it doesn't matter. Or we should have, if we wanted to tell the story right, we should have integrated it more with the game and changed things. But we're afraid to. Also, I think there's a few things that where we just tried making it as easy. So some of it's a very forgiving game, and there's some mechanics in there that are feeling a little weird. So for example, if you die, you can be revived by your partner at any time. If you both die, you lose a life, and then if you lose 3 of the lives that you have acquired, then it doesn't. Then you have to restart the level. But it feels a bit weird. So death doesn't really have a consequence, and these hearts you can get by munching up all the coins. And other than that, the coins that we collect don't have any meaning, and the lives also. They really don't have a big meaning, and it's something that I struggled with, and that we wanted to have meanings, and but then it turned out to be like the ideas that we had would change a lot of things in the game, and would change a lot of I think like the severity of death in the game. So maybe dying would be a really horrible experience, or we somehow went the middle way. So if you now die, you lose a life. Okay, too bad. You have 3 of those, so it's not too bad. But it's the middle ground between if somebody dies, he has to restart the level, or if somebody dies, nobody cares. It doesn't make a difference. So you can be revived at any time, and we kind of stuck in the middle there, and I don't think that was a good decision.
So so you mentioned earlier that you also launched for the consoles, PS4 and Xbox One.
Yeah.
Was there anything that needed to be changed, like the user interface for the consoles?
A tiny bit, but we already built the game to be played with controllers. So a lot of the interface that we had is very much usable with controls and or keyboard. So that wasn't too difficult. I think the most difficulties we had were integrating the whole the whole how would you call it, like the APIs of the consoles. They're
Right.
So the user management, memory management, and
The backend
things like
stuff,
the
basically.
controllers. Yeah, the whole backend, the user profile management is a mess on both platforms. It's something that's like, so you have to do a lot of things right. So you get like a book of things that says like, do this, do that, do what the user is expecting. And it is something that's a bit, I'd say, it's hard work, and it all makes sense because the console owners and gatekeepers, they want to have like a certain amount of quality on their platform, which I understand perfectly. I think that's perfectly fine. But I think some of the things that you have to do and that you have to fulfill are a little ridiculous, and it's a lot of work because these aren't like 4 pages. These are like books of things that you have to fulfill. And the more services you use, for example, our online multiplayer, the more requirements you have.
Did the publisher help with that at all? Like to help you guys
They
understand it
did.
better?
The Coop was our publisher. They're very they did their own console development, so they are experienced with doing console, and they have a very good QA department. And so we had access to their QA, and their QA went through our game before we did the whole release and the submission for the certifications on both platforms. And it's a very experienced team, and so they did see things that we, I think, wouldn't have seen and we wouldn't have cared about, but they from their past submissions, they know what you have to keep an eye out for.
So your funding history is pretty interesting. You got a public fund from a film fund, right?
Yeah,
FFF
there's a film fund.
Bayern. You got about 114,000 euros from that, and you also got 50,000 euros from private investors. So
Yeah.
that's to pay 10 people for 4 years.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? Yeah, and the rest of it, which is quite a big amount. So I think like that's about a third of the game budget. I'd say a third. Yeah. It's around a third of the game budget.
The rest came from yourselves, right? You funded
Exactly.
it yourselves by doing
Yeah,
contract work, doing outside work, right? So
exactly that.
So what did you learn from a business point of view?
I think from a business point of view, it was very similar. Some of the things we weren't brave enough to basically charge people for work because we didn't believe in our expertise at first. So the first customers we had, we were like, they put on a more or less game design documents that like, and then they said, oh, I want to have this. And we looked at the document and we're like, oh yeah, that doesn't look too good. But you wouldn't ever say to your customer that his idea is horrible, although it was. And
Right.
Because you don't think that you know better. And it took some customers and some clients to find out that we knew better and that we knew what we were doing. And growing into that mindset of like, I know what I'm doing and I want to be paid for it. That took some time, and it was complicated. And now I think we were embodying it a little more. We're still not at the point where we were super confident when it comes to clients. And I think that confidence is one of the most valuable assets that we grew. And also the team really, they now kind of, they think that they can tackle anything, which is amazing. So there's a lot of stuff that the team now does that they wouldn't have done years before in terms of new software that they used for a project, or a certain kind of game that we didn't have an idea how they worked. And now everybody is basically able to learn very quick, and most of the people are very much brave enough to just tackle anything that comes to their table. And I think that that's the thing that we learned most from our clients, and also a little more self-respect. I think it's something that is greatly underestimated. You need to respect your own craft. You need to respect your own ideas and opinions, and it's something that we did not do too much, and that was a mistake. I think we should have trusted ourselves a little more, but that's a slow process, right? So if you're something that someone who's not a very confident person, then this takes time. It takes time to realize that your ideas are worth something, that your work is worth something, and that confidence is very, very valuable, because it also speaks for your work. So you will see in the work of someone who's done things way longer, he will make more brave decisions, because he trusts his own opinion and his own his own work.
So another interesting thing that I found out about you organize Indie Arena booth at Gamescom, which is like one of the biggest games convention in the world. And that Indie Arena booth is a place where indie developers, we're using quite a lot of the term indie now, the indie developers get to showcase their game, right? And I also was pleasantly surprised to see a couple of the games on there are Airships and Niche, which both of them I had interviewed before. So tell me about that. How did you get started with that? How did you get a spot at Gamescom to do this Indie Arena booth thing? It's an annual thing that you're doing, right?
It's annual, so it's every year.
So every
at Gamescom. Yeah, I have to admit, I only jumped on there. So the guy who initially started it is Oliver Eli. He also makes games. One of the games called Sky Arena and Farm for Your Life, and he's a great dude. And a few years ago, he said like, so why is there no good indie space at Gamescom? So why don't we have things like the Indie Mega Booth? Why is that? How much does it cost? And then he got a proposal from Gamescom. He just asked them, so okay, what does like 20 square meters cost in your strange convention? And they told him the price, and he said, okay, I'm gonna do that. And then he basically built the whole booth in his backyard with a friend, and they invited indies over to exhibit their games. And we weren't part of the first lineup, but we were part of the second lineup then. And after the whole thing, Oliver came to me and he was like, hey, Robin, I know you're also doing like events in Munich, and would you be crazy enough to organize a 500 square meter booth at Gamescom with me? Because before that it was like 30 square meters or something. So that was now like more than 10 times the size, and the people exhibiting on that booth. And I said yes. I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was because I don't like Gamescom too much. It's the consumer show is horrible.
Do you feel it's a very corporate thing?
It's super crowded. It's super corporate, and it's not so much about games. It's more about
where the big boys play.
Yeah. It's very, very much a big boys club, and there's I personally I don't like it. It's something that I always feel uncomfortable there, and now with the Indie Arena booth, I have my personal retreat where I feel comfortable. I think like most people that go there, most journalists, they hang around 90% of the time. They hang around in the business area, where it's there's nice air conditioning. It's not very loud, but outside on the show floor, it's super loud, and it's crowded, and there's a lot of dirt and a lot of trash lying around. Everybody's using flyers and giveaways and throwing them away the second after they receive them. So it looks like a battlefield, and it sounds like a battlefield.
I'm gonna guess your booth is one of the most popular booths at Gamescom.
It is a very popular booth. It's not as popular as something like maybe like League of Legends or the Blizzard booth, or you
Right.
can't compete with them because they have like a huge fan base
Right,
that's
right.
massively invested in the game. So they basically live there. But it's a very popular booth. It's people go there to get a chance to chat with developers, which is one of our unique things that we have at the booth. The developers are usually all there. So the person who made the game stands right next to it, and you can chat with them. And it's something that's a very new experience for a lot of boosters because they usually get the best case, they get the PR guy telling them why the game is so amazing.
Right.
And the people at our booth are maybe also telling them they're going to tell you the story of the game, and that's not always going to be happy. There's no NDAs, there's no filter of a PR plan. There's no marketing guy there, and it's very free what they tell the people that come over. And I think that's one of the most fabulous things about the booth. And also, it's a great party for everybody that goes there as a developer, because you meet a lot of other developers and you chat, and maybe even like there's some smaller publishers like Raw Fury, which you can talk to, and it's like just a nice meeting of nice people, and the environment is also a little loud, but we are more or less in the oasis of quiet and developers at Gamescom. So it's a great place to go.
How many submissions
there.
do you get?
I think last year was about 200.
Jeez.
200.
And how many do you
something.
showcase every year, roughly, on average?
I think like 50 to 60.
Do everyone send a representative, or does everyone send a representative?
Yeah, so the people are required to send someone. So it's not possible to just like pay for your booth and then set up your game and then go there.
Right. Okay, so let's get on to the part where every game developer loves, the marketing.
Yeah.
Were there any specific marketing efforts that you feel got the game more attention than others? Maybe a specific hashtag, or like, were there any specific things that you saw like, oh, this actually brings results, we're just gonna do this more now?
Yeah, I think the one thing that really works for us is getting it to people. So YouTube and streamers are big. You know, I think like these outlets are now more or less where a lot of people make their decision to buy a game or not to buy a game. And you have to find people that not only are big, but that are playing the kind of game you want to sell. So it doesn't make sense for me to go to PewDiePie and just give him our game and tell him, hey, do something about our game. And
he might make your game look racist. I don't know, but
yeah, that's a whole nother topic. Yeah, I mean, you can't expect him just to cover your game and then get instantly rich.
Right.
First, so one of the things is that people go to these entertainers to be entertained, not to get like a product review. In the fewest cases, they are expecting a review. They're expecting a certain form of entertainment, which has to do all with the personality and how the people are interacting with the game. The games are basically their groundwork. The games are the stage that they play their personality on. And it doesn't mean like if someone streams your game, it doesn't mean that they're selling your game. It means that they're playing it and they're using it to entertain their audience. And maybe their audience thinks, oh, hey, that looks great. I want to have that same experience, so I'm buying this game. And they do amplify sales a lot. So these people have a big influence that's undeniable. But what we found out works best for us is going to the people who do these kind of games more than they do other games. So, for example, there's a group they call the Kilobits, and they play a lot of local multiplayer games. local co-op and local versus games, and they're very experienced with that. And going to them, it was good because they said like, hey, the game looks great. It looks like just like the games we usually play. And for us, that was really good. And also it was very good because their audience expects them to play these games, and their audience is kind of willing to have to buy these kind of games. So you have to, if you try to get a YouTuber or a Twitcher or whoever does publicity and is promoting games, if you want to have them cover your game, make sure your game is of value to them. It helps them, and it actually fits their narrative. It fits their content. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It has to be part of what they stand for. And it's not about the size of the YouTuber. It's more about like what audience are they catering to, and does my game fit that audience? And if it does, most of the YouTubers are happy to talk about your game. But if it's something that they don't care about and that doesn't fit their audience, they're not going to talk about it, or at least they're not going to talk about it in a positive way.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna end soon. Just a couple more questions. What would be a couple of things that you would do differently?
I think for what we would do differently is we would try to talk more about our games and be more accessible, and maybe test it a little sooner, so we can see if the people like it or not. Also, the next game, as I said before, I think it's going to be something that's a little more risky, maybe a little more edgy, something that has a certain that's maybe more has the chance to stand out from the mass. So something that's not usually mass appealing, but has a very strong core. And also for the next game, I really want to do something where somebody else does the financial risk,
Right?
Because doing the whole thing on our own it's a drag, because you can't possibly work 50-50 on something. It's maximum efficiency of you is going to be 40-40, and 20 gets lost on the way somewhere. It's friction.
Right.
You can't switch between two things and expect like your output just to be split in equal parts, or just the switching takes up time. And I really want to focus on things that we only do one project, and that's financed by someone else, so we don't have to care too much about money. But that has a big influence on how you make games, and if it's I think that's something that I really want to do different. Find someone else who does the financial risk. That would be great.
So, are you currently in the funding round? Do you feel Shift Happens would, make investors or publishers a bit more confident in your abilities?
I think it will at least show that we're able to deliver. It's not a game that delivers a great success to the world and everybody's waiting for the next one, but it shows our technical abilities. It shows that we know the craft and that we know what we're doing and that we're able to finish it. But that's about it.
Right. So I actually looked up all your Twitter accounts, and one of your artists, Elena, I saw like a sketch of maybe a protagonist for your next game.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks super cool. I like the art style. And that is the end of the interview. Thank you very much, Robin, for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great talk, great questions, and it was very nice chatting with you.
Thank you. It's always super fun to get to know people behind the games, really. So yeah, you can check out Shift Happens. All the links will be in the description below. It's on Steam, it's on PS4, it's on Xbox One. All the links will be in the description below. You will know where to find it. So thank you very much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time. Bye bye. Thank you again, Robin, for your time.
Thanks. Bye bye.